welcome back to our second video for week 4, and this video is all about salts. So the salt that we are familiar with is found all over our earth and is very common. It is found in the oceans and in our bodies and in other organisms to help us function properly. We need salt to survive. There are many different kinds of salts. And salt is formed in nature by these reactions that are actually happening in nature all the time. It's these acid-base reactions, and it happens in weathering. It happens with with volcanoes erupting. It's a fascinating process how our biosphere is operating and how mass is conserved, and all these things are happening to create these beautiful things that we need, and that also make it possible for specialized ecosystems and just for life to flourish on Earth. Salts are formed by a chemical reaction when we combine an acid and a base, and you end up with two products, a salt and water. Salts are ionic compounds. The ionic bonds are not as strong as covalent bonds, if you remember that from last week. So covalent bonds, they're sharing those electrons, and both the atoms are holding on really tight to those shared electrons. But in ionic compounds, that bond isn't quite as strong, and so they can come apart easily, especially when a salt is placed in water. They dissolve or dissociate in water, which makes water such a great solvent because it's polar itself, and so it pulls apart the ionic compounds. And here you have, again, this is table salt, NaCl, in solution, and we see that water is acting on the ions, pulling them apart. And the hydrogen part of the water molecule is attracted to the Cl negative ion, and the oxygen, the negative, electronegative oxygen atoms of the water molecule is attracted to the sodium ion. And again, we know that these salts are formed when the acid, such as HCl or hydrogen chloride, reacts to a base like potassium hydroxide to form a salt like potassium chloride, and the other byproduct is the water. So we have NaCl or sodium chloride in salt mines, and they occur in our body because our body needs these ions in basically every kind of cellular function. In the way that our nerves are transporting all the messages to our brain, like you absorbing all this information right now. All that is happening because ions and electrolytes are moving this information throughout our body. It's so amazing. Yeah, so salt, here we have just table salt. And once again, it's so important in our body and our nervous system for all the cellular functions. And that is for all organisms as well. Another type of salt is sodium nitrate. And this is, we know it as gunpowder. So here we have gunpowder. This is a type of salt. Another one is potassium nitrate, or KNO3. And it's found in deposits in the ground. And potassium nitrate is used in fertilizer. So we know that bacteria in the ground can take these kinds of compounds, right here, and break it apart. It's called nitrogen fixing. We learned about the nitrogen cycle in our ecology. And we also learned that early in the 1900s, chemists Fritz Haber figured out how to do that in a lab. And so now we are able to use fertilizer to produce so much more food in the world, to sustain the population of humans and animals as well. Here we have another type of salt. This is called calcium carbonate. Calcium carbonate is found in chalk and limestone, which is a type of sedimentary rock, and it's formed from the shells of living organisms. It is a main ingredient used in antacids such as Tums or Alka-Seltz or those kind of things. They would use this compound to neutralize the acid in our stomach when we have a stomach ache. And that brings us to the end of this very short second video all about salt.